the Miscreant Hour.
Sometimes you need to know when to put on your pants and leave.
Yeah, just seriously, put your dick away and bounce. Welcome to another episode.
What's up, everybody?
Thank you for joining us at the Miscreant Hour, courtesy of GrindFactor.com. It is Mr. Skag.
And Mr. Blue.
And we would like to welcome a great guest. Today we have...
We got a good one for you guys today.
Seth Harwood is on the show.
Seth Harwood.
Author of some really kick-ass books, the Jack Palm series, Jack Wakes Up, This is the End, and his latest book, In Broad Daylight. So we want to say what's up to Seth, and hope you guys enjoy the show. What's up, Seth?
Hello, how's it going, guys?
Really good.
Good.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Nice to be here. I'm happy to be here. I haven't done one of these in a little while, so it's nice to get back on the microphone.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you're a pretty old school podcaster yourself there.
Yeah, back in the days. I started podcasting like 2006.
Damn, yeah, that was when like podcasting was like just starting to become something that people really even knew what the fuck it was.
Yeah, we were sort of fighting the battle of trying to convince people that it was something.
Yeah.
And like after a while, we were like, oh, whatever. Like NPR and all those guys will convince people. We just need to keep putting out our stuff. So we did that for a while. It was fun.
Yeah.
Good time.
So we were talking about earlier, you said it was called the Hot Tub Podcast?
Yeah, I had a number of different podcasts, and basically I was podcasting all my fiction for a long time, and then I sort of ran out of everything that I had written, so I just started doing interviews for a little while.
Right.
That's a really brilliant delivery method. Deliver a story like that?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Because I was going to tell anybody who doesn't know, like that's kind of how you got, how you really got famous and really got out there, right? You weren't like traditionally published in the beginning. You just put your shit out yourself through your podcast, like serialized version, right? And then people started kind of digging it and were into it, and then kind of snowballed from there.
That's so fucking cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool way to do it.
Right. I mean, I used to have a long car ride, so I could never picture myself like reading somebody's book on my computer or something, but I knew that like if I could get it to people in their cars, they might listen to it.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was the route that I went. People really started to dig it.
So it was kind of just like an organic thing, because I mean when we do the whole podcasting thing, obviously, and like one of the biggest questions for you is like, how did you get so many people to fucking listen to your shit? You know, it was just like was this like a random happen chance thing, or like you actively went out there and promoted it, or what?
Well, right before I came on the scene, there was this website that started called audiobooks.com, which is still doing a ton of fiction. It's like all audiobooks for free, and I was really associated with them. And they, a lot of my fans and listeners came to me through that format.
Okay.
I was able to get a little traction on there and people would notice. But right before I came on the scene, audiobooks started. Initially, it was like 4 guys were the only ones who were podcasting fiction.
Yeah.
It was Scott Sigler, Mark Jeffrey, T. Morris, and one other guy. I can't even remember who the other guy was. But basically, like, there were these 4 guys who were podcasting. And they had like a ton of listeners each because there was nothing else out there in the environment that was doing that.
Yeah.
So when I came on, I got a lot of help from Scott Sigler.
Yeah, I've read some of his stuff. He's good.
He basically had like 10,000 listeners, and he started telling them about my stuff, and then they started coming over and checking it out.
Cool.
Yeah. That's really some trailblazing shit right there.
Yeah, for real.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. It's a pretty interesting way to go about doing it. And I think like you guys kind of like pioneered that shit, so a lot more authors are doing it now. You hear about it like more and more about people releasing their books in like a serialized format on a podcast or audiobook style, but it's I
don't hear about it at all. I sort of fell out of it's hard to stay up with all that, and like I kind of fell out of the mix. And I know Scott is still podcasting like crazy. His audience has just gone up and up and up.
Yeah, he must have a ton of people that listens to his stuff by now. Because if he started out with that many people,
crazy too. But he also has like so much content that like people will be emailing him and listening to him, and like it'll take them a long time to get through all of his stuff.
Right.
So for people to get up to his current stuff, it can take a really long time.
Yeah, it's got to be hard to know where to start.
All my stuff is on a website is on Libsyn hosting. So basically, like I have a ton of content on there, and I'm still paying them like $5 a month to host that. And I'm like, I thought that at some point I could just stop paying you and you would still host. And they're like, no, you gotta fuck.
Greedy fuckers.
And I don't want to like shift all that stuff to other hosting. A lot of it is on Audiobooks anyway. So soon I need to cut the cord with Libsyn and just like take a lot of that stuff down. I don't even know like how much. I mean, the crazy thing though is that last time I looked, people were still downloading the old stuff. It would still get like a couple thousand downloads a month.
Yeah, that ain't bad.
So it feels kind of weird, but it's definitely out there. It's still getting traction. People are still listening to the stuff. And I think, last time you and I spoke a little bit, you were saying that you found my stuff on Amazon.
Yeah.
I still feel like there's a lot of people that are finding my stuff through the podcast world and then hopefully going out and purchasing the books as well to support the work.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Because I personally, I knew that you were doing the podcast thing and releasing, like, your books that way, but I've always just liked reading more traditional route, so I'm like, okay, I know he's doing that, but fuck it, like, I'd rather buy the book anyway, just because I would rather read an actual book, you know what I mean?
Like the smell of the pages.
Yeah, I'm super old school like that. I like the smell of the pages, I like the feel of it. Yeah, I like the hard
hand.
My co-host is getting excited when I mention hard things in my hand. He's such a fucking faggot.
Wow. Yeah.
But so I found your shit on Amazon and ordered the actual paperback, and I listened to the audio stuff too, because you would read it, right? So it was your voice.
Yeah, and I wound up, like, I sort of backed my way into it. I just started reading the book, and I was doing like a male voice and a female voice, and then like all of a sudden there's like 5 Czech dudes or something, and I had to like basically come up with all these different varieties of my Schwarzenegger impersonation.
Yeah, well, at least you went for it. Like, a lot of people, when you hear an audiobook, they have like the same voice throughout the whole thing. It's like so monotone and boring.
The thing is, I don't think I was good, but people liked it. But like, the main important thing is that you just have to be able to let people know when the characters change. Like, if each one kind of has his own voice.
Yeah.
And that really helps people when they're listening.
Yeah, otherwise they can't keep up.
As long as the effort is
talking.
there, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying, and you got to be able to laugh about it too. Like, I definitely didn't think that my Czech voices were any good, but there was definitely an element of humor in there too that I think people liked.
Yeah, that's cool. So how many books do you have out right now? Because for anyone who isn't listening, like the biggest thing that is associated with you is your Jack Palm series, which is what I first started
reading. Which you
reading.
all should check out.
Yeah. We're gonna post links to it on GrindFactor, all the different links to Amazon and stuff, and the books. And the first one is called Jack Wakes Up, which is an awesome book.
Yep.
That's the first thing I checked out for you. And then you have a sequel to that book, and then you have a third one out that's just not out in paperback.
Sequel to Jack Wakes Up is called This Is Life.
Right.
And then there's kind of a prequel to those, which is called Young Junius.
Yeah, I got that one too. Yeah, that was a character in Jack Wakes Up that you did the people really liked, and then you did a prequel just involving him, right?
Yeah, so that was like his origin story. He's like 14 years old in that one.
Yeah, that was a badass book.
Yeah, that one, I'm really happy with that one. It's like, I sold less copies than anything else I've done, and like, it's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, because you wrote in that book like the slang, that like people would actually talk with. Like, I've hung out a lot in those areas, so like I know very well that that dialect, that kind of like a voice, like the slang, right. and you would write it like perfectly in just like in the quotations of characters talking. You nailed like that slang down really perfectly. So you're reading it on the page, and like you would hear like it in your head of someone talking that exact same way, and that kind of.
Yeah. So I guess I have to ask then: does that come from personal experience or research?
Personal experience, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, I put a lot of, there was a lot of heart in the characters in that one, and sort of the dialogue really flowed from like people that I knew, and it's interesting to hear you say that it really rings true to you, because I've even had people to come up to me and say like, yeah, man, I knew people who talked exactly like this in the 80s, and they're like, kids these days, they talk totally different, but in the 80s, like, that's exactly how people were talking there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels really good to know that I really hit it there, because people look at me and they're like, well, you teach at this school and you teach at that school. Like, you're this tall white dude. Like, how did you get into all that?
Yeah, well, you know about the street, right?
I was definitely running with some of those angles for a little bit when I was coming up.
Yeah.
Just, as a writer, I've just always been really fascinated by dialogue and how people talk. And I definitely feel like there's a certain, if you watch a show like The Wire, like that show is completely getting it.
Yeah, that was that was a great show. Yeah. And the book,
like regional aspect of it.
Yeah.
I feel like came out in the Boston Cambridge stuff that I wanted to represent.
Right.
That sort of has its own kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, who wrote the original book? That book, Clockers. It was like Richard Price or something like that. Who wrote the book?
That's Richard Price.
Yeah, they based The Wire off of. He in his dialogue was really like spot on too, where he would write, like how they talk. Because some authors don't do that. You'll kind of have to like they'll mention like that someone is speaking in slang, but they won't actually write it in slang. You know what I mean? So you'll kind of have to put that in your head. You don't actually read it written in slang, like, you know what I mean? They'll spell like U-Y-O-U instead of like Y-A with like an apostrophe. You know what I mean? So they won't write it that way.
Big fan though of not getting into the misspellings with it. Like, I really tried to avoid the misspellings with Young Junius. And if I was going to do it again, there's a couple of things that I would change. Like, I didn't want to use gonna.
Like G-O-N, yeah.
So I used G-O-N-E, and I thought that kind of worked, but it sounded a little Southern in my head. But anyway, I tried to avoid the misspellings because that was one of the big things that we talked about in graduate school, and that I try to work with on my students. Like that slang, the dialect is different than slang.
Right.
Once you get into the dialect, you start misspelling things, then it can be kind of a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Read a book by like Trainspotting.
Right. Yeah, with that Scottish.
That one is like all these Scottish.
It's brutal.
It takes a while to get into it, but once you really sort of get it, then you can hear the dialogue in your head. You can hear their slang, but it takes a while to sort of weed your way through that misspelling stuff.
Yeah, it's
definitely
not natural.
Work with just like the use of words and the diction, sort of the arrangement of words, and so that sometimes it might make it a little harder, but I think it works better.
Yeah.
And Richard Price, completely. Like, he's definitely one of my idols.
Yeah, he's good.
His writing is amazing. And one of the things that I know he does, similar to David Simon, the guy who was the producer, the director, writer of The Wire, the main one, he, like, both of those guys would just go hang out with these groups for a long time. So, I know that Richard Price probably spent a lot of time in Jersey City with the cops and with the cops in New York City, like hanging out and really getting to be around those people to hear how they talk.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to do some of that with my newer writing that I'm working on. Mainly, with Young Junius, that was just sort of like pulling it out of my childhood, basically.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to write out about any heroin addict ex-cons, you could totally ask me, and I'll hook you up with all the advice you need.
Getting the seal approval from you is pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, if you have questions about alcoholic sex addicts, you can ask this guy.
We have a 10-plus year veteran here as a fucking low-life gutter trash piece of shit.
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with it, which is why I totally love Jack Wakes Up. I'm like, man, this guy...
Good that you came out of that.
Yeah. So I personally, I like to read books about characters who are super flawed and kind of like that noir style, like really gritty style of writing. I read tons of books like that, so which is why that's how I found you. I would literally search for like gritty crime writers, blah blah blah, constantly until I found people's names, and then I would check out some of their work and then go back and forth and go to other authors who were related to them, and then your name ended up popping up in those kind of searches, and I started reading it. And I'm like, oh, cool, this is
it's another good one.
Yeah, there's drugs, guns, violence. I'm in. That's all I need.
For me, like for a long time, I was writing literary short stories, and I really loved that. But then, everyone was saying, you got to write a novel, and so I just reached a point where I was like, yeah, shit, I'm going to throw in drugs and guns and just run with it. And when I did, I started having a lot more fun on the page.
I bet.
And I think readers responded to that as well. So what other guys are you reading? You're reading like Jim Thompson?
Yeah, Jim Thompson.
Joe Clifford is a new guy that I was telling you about. You should check out his work.
Yeah, I'm always looking for for really, newer raw stuff. And I've read a lot of obviously like Bukowski. He writes a lot of just like that misogynistic, alcoholic grit, which I love. I'm always looking for new writers who are writing that and doing it like honestly. You know, a lot of people try to, but it doesn't come off as authentic in any way. So I can't really mess with it if I don't feel it's realistic and raw. You know, so it's hard to find writers that are pulling that off.
That's how I am with my comedy. If it doesn't feel honest, I can't get into it.
Yeah, yeah. Honesty and realism is important.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to do in the newer stuff that I'm doing more. You know, the thing is, like when I first started writing the Jack Wakes Up stuff, Jack Palms being the main character, I was really feeling like, you know, in the old days, we had these private eyes like Sam Spade and Marlowe, who like were a little bit flawed. Actually kind of really flawed, but they looked pretty clean from the outside. Like they had the suit and the big jaw and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I just thought, sort of as a reflection of our times, you look at characters like Tony Soprano or even Dexter. Like if these are going to be our heroes, we have to have like guys in the middle of it who are flawed. And so, you know, Jack is dealing with addiction issues.
Yeah.
And in the stuff that I'm writing now, I'm definitely writing more stuff on the like procedural side. Like my latest book is called In Broad Daylight, and it really features a female FBI agent who's chasing after a serial killer. And so the thing that's been kind of hard for me is like, you know, I sort of that authenticity of kind of like the dirty side,
right, I
feel comfortable with, and I can really go with that. The challenge that I've been having lately is really making these detectives, or right now I'm working on a book with a homicide detective in it, really making those guys authentic. And so I've been working to get to know people like that, and it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. But there's definitely sort of a line to walk, or sort of like a challenge of sort of just pulling from stuff that you know and grew up with,
right,
versus like stuff that you have to go out and find out about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't have experienced everything, so there's obviously going to be like a level of things that you have to kind of learn as you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like I want to write about this. This is the character I want to have at the center of things. This is how I want the story to go. And then it's like, okay, well, I need to go out and find out what that's like.
Yeah. What do you think is easier, like that, or what do you think is harder? That style of writing where you actually have to do like research on stuff because you're writing about something real, or like full on like fantasy that is just like total bullshit, and like you just make everything up as you go, like these guys and girls who create these entire like fantasy worlds and nothing is based in reality at all. You know what I mean? So I mean, what research can you really do about something like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you got to cook up a whole bunch of crazy shit if you're writing that second route. You really got to like hold it all in your head, come up with all these crazy ideas.
Right.
You can come up with that while you're writing it. Like as you continue to write it, something like that can grow and grow. For me, what's difficult is to sort of insert myself into that world of other people, like insert myself into the world of San Francisco police, not really knowing fully what's going on with them, but like sort of knowing a bit and then making up the rest. Then sometimes it's tricky because you keep learning and you keep talking to these people and finding out more. And then sometimes you find out too much and you're like, oh shit, like that whole thing that I did wasn't right. And you know that readers aren't going to call you on it. Like the majority of readers don't care or don't know enough to know that it's not quite right.
Right, they don't know any better.
And like you find out too much and you're like, oh man, I got to go back and fix that. And sometimes it's just small stuff, but sometimes it's big. So, you know, the thing with that, like Richard Price and David Simon would do is that they would just like go for a long time and just do research, like just ride around with the police for a year. And for me, like, I guess I would like to try that, but I haven't really been able to just like bite the bullet and get out there and
really
do that. Like
in.
I feel like I'd sort of chain myself to my writing desk, and I feel like, you know, in a good day, like I got to be at the desk, I've got to be writing, I've got to be doing that stuff. Maybe as I get older, and ideally as I get a little more successful, I'll be able to step away from the desk more and kind of take a breath and just kind of go live in those other worlds and absorb them a bit.
Yeah, and then go back to the table.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but for now, basically, I'm just like sort of doing both.
Yeah.
Going into those worlds a little bit and then trying to write it. And also trying to figure out, like, how much do people really need to know? Like, in the In Broad Daylight book, was about FBI agents in Alaska, and I had visited Alaska and really sort of took note of all the different places that I wanted to set the story in, but I didn't know much about being an FBI agent.
Right.
And it's funny. It's like, that's the thing that nobody questions. Like, nobody really worries about what it's like because, everybody's used to watching this stuff on TV,
Mm-hmm.
and TV gets it wrong all over the place.
Right.
You actually talk to these officers.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know some of it from being in the system a bit.
Sure, absolutely.
Like, shows get it wrong all over the place.
Yeah, big time.
So if you can just sort of gloss it up a bit or glam it up, then people like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's definitely like a certain amount of leeway that you're given where most people have no clue. You know what I mean? So you can kind of get it past them. I guess it depends like the kind of audience you're writing for. Like the general mainstream, public, they don't have any real idea like the inner workings of a lot of these worlds, and they don't really even care to know.
They just want to hear an entertaining story. I'm sure.
Yeah,
if it's good, like
yeah, exactly. Like with me, I go out of my way to like read stuff that's super gritty, but that's stuff that most people would not like at all because it's not it's too realistic. You know what I mean? And but that's what I personally like as a reader. You know what I mean? But I understand that a lot of the mainstream public doesn't like that. So
yeah, I mean, it feels like I'm talking about Richard Price a lot, but like he's really one of the guys where I just I read his latest book and it's like he just has it. Like he just gives you the voice of a New York City cop. And you're like, this is exactly what the job is like. This is the voice of that job.
Yeah, he's super believable.
And that's not everybody's audience. I think it's great, and he certainly does well. But then you look at somebody else. I mean, I started reading a James Patterson book because I wanted to see what he was doing, and that's something totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. Way more mainstream, like broad genre type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like an episode of Law and Order.
Yeah,
that's a 400-page book.
Right.
At a certain point, I'm like, okay, let's just get to the punchline here. Like, who did it? What's the deal? And then at that point, I just skimmed. But I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a huge audience for that kind of stuff. So I guess, in trying to be more financially successful as an author, I've been trying to figure that stuff out a little bit.
Yeah. Kind of like that golden formula of like how to still stay true to like what you want to write. But then, I mean, like I'm a musician, so I go through the same kind of thing with like music where, okay, I want to write something and write songs that are like, I think are really good and original and unique. But at the same time, I want to write something that's catchy and that people will like. So you kind of have to, I think in any art, you have to walk that line between what's commercially successful and like commercially appealing and what you want to do. And often those aren't quite the same thing, but you kind of have to figure it out, like what that magic formula is that people like,
right.
And with books.
At the same time, there's part of me that's like, you know what? Like, if you just tell me what you want me to write, someone's going to buy it, I will write. I just love writing and being at the desk.
Yeah.
Like, I love to create my own thing. So I got this assignment to write a Vonnegut book, and I really like Vonnegut's work. I read him when I was younger. I thought he was great. And so I was meeting with these people from Amazon, and they had this, they were doing this Amazon Worlds thing, which was kind of like fan fiction, but you couldn't say fan fiction because that's a dirty word. And so they were doing like all these really marketable things like Pretty Little Liars and Vampire something and this thing and that. For some reason, they got the Vonnegut rights. They wanted to have Vonnegut World, and nobody was doing it. So they're like, all right, we'll pay you this amount to write something in Vonnegut. And I was like, all right, fuck yeah. So I just like went in and cranked this book out, and I swear by it. Like, it was a great writing experience for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And it was great to just sit down at the desk every day and be like, all right, if I can crank out this many words, it's this much money. And it felt great. But I think that what came out of that process, partly because I can connect with Vonnegut, but I might have been able to do that with any kind of piece. But yeah, I mean, what came out of that, I think, was really true to my heart. Like, it dealt with September 11th and part of being a writer and living in San Francisco.
Can people read that? Where is that?
What?
Can people read that, or where is that?
People can read that. Nobody fucking reads it. I mean, nobody reads it. People can read it. It's out there on it's on Amazon. Like, it's on Amazon for sale on Kindle.
Oh.
And I got a couple paper copies here. I'll send you a paper copy, or I'll show you where you can get one. But
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, like it's cool. I'm happy with it. Like it enabled me to talk about what it's like to be a father, and just trying out Vonnegut's crazy stuff that he does.
Yeah.
It was interesting to sort of experiment in metafiction and stuff like that. So in that respect, like they were just like, this is what you should do, and I just kind of did it and ran with it. The opposite is like nobody wants to just be like, yeah, I'm just cranking this stuff out. It doesn't have my heart in it. But at the same time, it's like if someone tells me sort of the parameters and I'm writing it, a lot of my heart is going to go into it either way.
Yeah,
it was like in this fall, I had written a book last summer with Jack Palms in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like him going after this crazy mythical pair of Air Jordan game-worn sneakers.
Sweet.
And I was like, this is the fucking book. This is the one. I love this thing. I think this is going to be the greatest thing anybody's ever written. I was like calling it the Maltese Jordans.
Sweet.
Throwing in all kinds of like crazy basketball references and jokes and just crazy stuff going on, like Hawaiian meth dealers like trying to smuggle these Jordans into New York City to sell them, and there's celebrities in it. It was good stuff. It's good. And so I brought it to my editor, and I was like, all right, here's the 2 projects that I have. There's this one that I started a couple of years ago, which I would like to finish after I finish this Jordans thing. And then there's the Jordans thing, which I think is the greatest book of all time. And she's like, yeah, we want the other one. Like,
oh, God.
Sounds really good to us.
That sucks.
Granted, like stepping back from it a little bit, I think it's more marketable. And now working on it and writing it for an extended period, like I think it's good. I'm making it good. I can make it good.
Yeah.
But I'm also really excited to finish it and then get back to the sneakers one.
Right.
Does that really piss you off though, that they didn't really want the other one first, the Jordan one?
No, I mean, I understand why they did it, and it's like, or I understand why they make their decisions. I mean, they know who their audience is. They know who owns Kindles and who's buying books on Kindles.
Yeah.
And so for them to say, like, this is our audience, these are the kind of books that do well, this book that you have here falls into those categories, this one doesn't. Like, I'm still going to do the other one and put it out one way or another with some publisher.
Yeah.
And, maybe it'll be like Young Junius, and I'll talk to you or I'll talk to some guy like you in a couple of years, and they'll be like, yeah, that book was the shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I know guys who will love that book. And a guy that I work with who's done some editing on it loved it. And, he's a basketball head. I've done the research on the sneakers and really started to become a bit of a sneaker head here. And it's like, I know those worlds are out there, and people in those worlds will appreciate this if they ever get their hands on it.
Yeah.
But then, there's another world out there that really is looking to buy books. And people in the industry are like sneakerheads, man. A, I don't know how many sneakerheads are out there. And B, sneakerheads don't read books.
Yeah,
it's by sneakers. Like someone would be like, oh, heroin addicts, they don't read books. Right.
Yeah, it's fun. That's true.
You're basically like defying the odds by reading books.
Yeah.
They're not, like no publisher wants to like bet against the odds.
Right.
So at a point, it's like, okay, I can do this and keep like working on this other job that pays, or I can write something that I think is going to pay. And at a certain point, it's like, I used to just want to be a teacher and sort of like get sort of prizes and awards and stuff, and like be really, really well regarded as a writer, but not make money. And now I'm like, fuck it. Like, I want to make money.
Yeah, let's make money.
I don't blame you.
And I want to write books that sell.
Yeah.
And so In Broad Daylight has sold more than anything else that I've done. And, it's popping up on other people's Amazons, but maybe it'll be a while before it pops up on yours.
Right.
It's a very different kind of book.
Yeah, I remember reading. I always plan on, because just anything that you write, I'm like, okay, well, if he puts out a book, like, I'm going to read it because I like his style. But then I read, like, the description for it, and I'm like, wow, like, it sounds cool, but, like, I could tell it was, like, it sounded way more, like, commercially viable. Like I felt like a book that way more people could get into. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's probably why it's doing so well, which is cool. I have to
Crazy
pick that
thing,
up.
though, is that I was reading, I read those Stieg Larsson books a few summers ago, like 2010. The girl with the dragon tattoo and all that?
Yeah, those are good.
Those are fucking dark. Those are some dark, dirty books.
Mm-hmm.
Those things have sold like crazy. Like, there's crazy shit that happens in those.
Yeah, rape scenes and all kinds of wacky shit.
Sex that's totally unbelievable, and like all kinds of violence and stuff. And people love that shit.
I know. Yeah, those books sold like crazy.
I would figure that people like. I think you were kind of saying it before that people usually probably only want to get so deep with that stuff. They don't want their stomach to get upset.
Yeah, but then
when reading something like that.
Yeah, but then every once in a while, like books like that come along that like are super dark and super brutal, and people do eat them up. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird.
So I started really thinking about what was going on with that, and I think a large part of it is like, the female character in that was really powerful, and I think that really turned people on. Like, if there's violence and it's happening at the hands of a woman, I think also, like, as a society, like, I'm kind of bored with, like, seeing dudes beat up other dudes, or, like, seeing guys beat up women. Like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
I love that show, True Detective.
Yeah, that's a great show.
One of the best things I've seen in a long time. I'm sure you guys have seen that.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
I can't wait. The
excellent.
second season is coming out pretty soon. This looks really good, too. Totally different cast.
But when I first started watching that, I was like, you know what? I mean, this is another thing where it's like you've got a girl that's killed, and some of my stuff features, In Broad Daylight has girls getting killed by this dude, and looking at it now, like from a little bit later and a bit of a remove, it's like, man, like, violence towards women being what it is, but like the female murder victim. I just feel like we've done that so much. So I want to try some different things for a little while.
Yeah.
One that I'm writing now has a female homicide detective, but she, the dude that is killing the people is killing all these guys in San Francisco that, the guy that she is, sort of tracking, or the guy that is committing the crimes in this, is killing men who basically pay prostitutes to let them beat them up. Oh. So like there's a bit of an S&M scene in San Francisco where people will pay to like do some S&M on prostitutes.
Yeah.
Now the guy is like killing the Johns in that community.
Oh shit.
So that's what I've been interested in.
Wait, is that a sequel to In Broad Daylight or different?
What?
Is that a sequel to In Broad Daylight or a totally different book?
Different character.
Okay.
For a while, I was looking at it as a possible sequel to In Broad Daylight, but the voice of this character is just very different. Like she's. I mean, there's a big difference between the way that FBI agents and homicide detectives, I think, carry themselves and think.
Yeah. And
so this character's voice was like, she's a police officer.
Yeah. So, Seth, are you traditionally published right now, or how did that? Like, what's going on with that? Like, you're not still self-publishing your shit, are you, or do you got picked up at some point by like a big publisher?
The only book that I self-published actually was This Is Life. Like after I started podcasting, Jack Wakes Up got picked up by a small publisher, and then we kicked ass on Amazon with that. So Three Rivers Press, so then I got an agent in New York, and then Three Rivers Press, which is part of
Yeah, it's a Random House, right? Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's a Random House division, right?
Yeah, Three Rivers Press, part of Random House. They bought it and put out Jack Wakes Up like a year later, and then they were really gung-ho for sales. They're like, what kind of sales can you do? But they weren't doing a lot to drive the sales, so they were just kind of looking at me like, okay, do some go on the internet and
yeah,
sell 5,000 books. And I was like,
what the fuck?
So then I did Young Junius with Tyrus Books, which is a small independent that I worked with. Who actually, that was the first opportunity I had to work with Allison Jansen, who I now work with at Thomas & Mercer, which is basically the crime and mystery imprint at Amazon.
Sweet.
So within Amazon Publishing, they have publishing houses now at Amazon.
Yeah.
It doesn't involve self-publishing at all. Like, it's a full publishing house.
Right.
With access to everything at Amazon. So they really have the ability to put power behind a book and sell copies of it. So that's who I'm working with.
That's cool.
I'm really happy to be working with them because I don't see anyone else in the publishing industry right now who, there are companies in New York that will publish they might have 1 in 20 or 1 in 15 books that they decide to publish that they're going to throw a lot of money behind.
Yeah.
And they're going to really crank up the advertisements and everything and really try to get it done. But all the other books, they're not putting a lot of money behind. And so, I just don't see that method working. And so with Amazon, some of it is them having money to put behind the books, but some of it is just them being internal and being able to do these ads and different kind of promotions.
Yeah.
That I think really works and sells copies.
That's cool.
They have access to Kindle, and Random House doesn't have a proprietary device that people are reading on. Even Apple, there's way more people reading on Kindles than on iPads.
That's true.
Apple isn't publishing, so for Amazon to be involved in the publishing process, there's just so much more that they can do.
Yeah, they have a huge leg up
right,
on the just automatically having Kindle users right there.
Yeah, distribution, promotion, people can buy it anywhere, and just wherever you are, you open up your Kindle, there's an ad on it.
Yep.
They can make that an ad for your book, and it doesn't cost them a lot of money because they're the ones. It's the same company.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You love Kindles, right? You read it on Kindle.
I love my Kindle.
Seth, do you read on a Kindle? I'm still really old school with books. I don't have a Kindle. I just have stacks of fucking books in my place. But I haven't crossed over yet.
I read both, and one of the things that I really started to like about Kindle was that, there were big books that, you look at a certain book in a bookstore, and that thing is big.
Yeah.
You want to carry it around.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can't, get comfortable with it in bed.
Yeah.
And, so there were certain books that I knew I would never, I wanted to read a biography of James Joyce at some point. I was carrying that thing around New York when I lived there. I would never finish it. And then a copy of Raymond Carver biography came out. It was 800 pages, and I just had it on the Kindle. There's no problem to read. So there's some advantages to the Kindle, and I started getting into it. And now, I've got an office here in San Francisco, and I've got my house. And my office is basically 3 bookshelves full of books. And it's if I'm going to go away and give up this office for a while, it's going to be a pain in the ass to box up those books and stick them somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm at that age now where I'm just thinking about stuff like that occurs to me, and I'm I live in California now. I've lived in Boston, Iowa, and back and forth in between those places, and it's I have books that I've carted across the country 2-3 times in boxes, and now I'm just there's a book today that I was going to buy by a friend of mine. I think it's a great book. I want to read it. And I'm seriously debating, do I get the Kindle copy or do I buy the hardcover? The difference in price is $5 on Amazon.
Yeah.
I only buy books at Amazon now because independent bookstores aren't doing anything to push my book. So I'm fuck you guys.
Fuck it, yeah. Yeah.
I'll keep my $8.
Hell yeah.
But seriously, it's I love this guy. I want to have his book. On some level, I want to have it on the shelf to show people.
Right.
But really, I just don't want any more shit. At a certain point, you have so much shit, and you're just carrying it around. I don't want any more shit.
Yeah. And they take up a lot of fucking space. Books take up a shitload of space.
Yeah, so the Kindle really appeals to me in that sense. I can just buy something there. I don't have the physical thing to show for it, but I don't have to worry about doing anything with that physical. It's not going to be stuck on my night table 3 months from now. My wife is when are you going to clean off your night table? Some shit like that,
Yeah.
Yeah, between both having the regular versions of a book and the audio version, I could just blow through books all the time.
Yeah.
So when I'm driving to work, I listen to the audio. When I'm home, maybe I read it. I just love having both options like that.
Yeah, it is pretty cool that you have that. Audiobooks, yeah, I started messing with those a few years ago where I would listen to them in the car on the way to work or on the subway, and but I found my mind wanders, and I have a hard time focusing on them. When I'm reading, I can focus a lot more than when I'm listening to an audiobook. My mind will just fucking wander, or
that's why I get
lost staring at a girl's tits on the subway.
Find the right book.
Yeah.
I find that I just stick with it.
Right.
If it's the right book, I'm in it, I'm good. Sometimes even a book that I love, a reader on it will be terrible, and then that just kills it for me. But there's ones out there that are good.
The guy
doing the podcasting and audiobooks, I started listening to a lot of other guys' books, and some of them I could stick with, and there were a lot that I couldn't. But the ones that I stuck with, or even podcasts that I would get into, like I'll listen to like NPR, Terry Gross, stuff like that, and it's like I'm into it. I like it.
Yeah.
Did you have you heard any of the audio versions of the Game of Thrones books? Do you read those?
No.
Cause I was listening to the audio version, and they made Tyrion sound like an Irish Hobbit voice, that kind of voice, and I fucking hated it.
There's just one guy doing all the voices.
Yeah,
there's like 50 fucking characters.
He made Tyrion sound like an Irish, little pipsqueak Irish voice, and I just hated it because I guess I got so used to the show version of him.
Yeah.
His
wrong voice in the audiobook. Peter Dinklage is badass.
And just hearing it like that, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I had to stop listening to it.
Yeah, bad voice will ruin it for you.
Yeah, the guy who does Harry Potter, people love that. But there's something about, as I get older, I've come to realize that, there's some sort of steel trap in my head where it's as soon as you throw, a dragon or dudes with swords at Middle Ages at me,
yeah, you're over it.
Type of fantasy or sci-fi, and I'll talk to people who I respect, and they're like, oh, those Buffy the Vampire episodes are great. Or, they'll talk about Game of Thrones or some Star Trek show. And I'm just like, I don't know what it is about me. It's something, just the steel door just comes down. It's like,
nah.
Oh, Game of Thrones, blah, blah. People are like, that Battlestar Galactica that just came out is you got to watch it. And I'm like, literally lost me at Battlestar, and anything you said after that, great it is. I really appreciate, and I'm never gonna watch this, and that's a problem with me.
Yeah,
that's not your problem. That's my problem. I have a problem.
Yeah.
It's like swords and dragons. Fuck that.
So even Game of Thrones, I don't engage.
You can't do it, huh? Damn.
I'm usually like that too with Battlestar Galactica. I don't watch that shit, but I got into Game of Thrones. I actually got into that.
Tons of people do. Yeah, I love that show.
And
everyone loves that show.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was listening to Jim Florentine's podcast, Comedian.
Yeah.
And someone was asking him about the Game of Thrones. Like, no, I don't watch sword movies.
Yeah, anything involving swords.
That guy. I used to watch them when I was a kid, and now,
What do you got against swords? Is that some kind of weird fucking phobia?
I just love the way you put it. It's so simple, but it was fantastic,
if you put some swords into modern day and you have ninjas or some shit, I'm all over that.
That's cool, yeah.
You, expect me to go back to the days of chainmail and horses and shit?
Oh, so it's a time period. So if someone had, a sword in New York City...
If you, have these guys in England or, running around London now, fucking people up with swords...
That's cool.
I would totally watch that.
All right, so it's really the fruity, medieval time period that you don't like. Not the fact of a sword itself. I would totally read a book about a crazy guy with a sword running around Manhattan. Mm-hmm. That'd be badass.
Yeah, exactly. Al Guthrie would probably write that.
Or a guy with a hammer.
Yeah, that right. Did you hear about that dude? There's we have so many guys with hammers in New York. They just love running around.
He just got shot last week. Hitting people with hammers.
Yeah,
and
but we've
shit.
had that's not the first guy to run around the park hitting people with a fucking hammer.
Nope, I don't think so.
Hammers are cheap and accessible. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but what about the mindset to do that? It's crazy. Imagine you're just walking through the park and a guy comes out with you with a fucking hammer. Jesus, dude, talk about ruining someone's day.
Yep.
That's when you sweep the leg.
Yeah, seriously, I'd be like, you crazy homeless fucker! I'm gonna beat the shit out of you with this fucking hammer.
He's on PCP and rips your face off. And
yeah, he probably is.
And then he eats it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on bath salts, so he eats your fucking face.
Oh, God damn
this is a sick world, man.
Yeah, it is fucking sick. Now that we were talking about
I'm gonna go back out into that world, guys. I gotta bust out in a minute.
All right.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's been about an hour.
Actually, it's been a while. Yeah.
So yeah, you go do your thing.
I want to say I really appreciate you guys having me on. This is a good talk. I'll definitely put this up on my feeds to let people listen to some of our yapping.
Yeah, I'll appreciate that. Yeah, I'll send you the link and everything when it's all done. I'll post some links to your book and stuff on our site, and yeah, we'll be good to go. Thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, tell people about it.
Absolutely.
Word.
Yeah, we'll tweet it, and we'll spread the word for sure.
Tell people what to read.
Yeah, I'm gonna force people into buying the books throughout threat of physical violence if they don't, and they'll listen to me too. I don't fuck around. Yeah. All right, cool.
I'll have Vonnegut one too. Let me know what you think of that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I definitely want to check that out. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. Yeah, talk to me on email, and I'll tell you some other authors that might be willing to come on and chat.
Yeah, I love it.
That'd be
all right,
great.
cool. Thanks, Seth.
All right, take care.
Thanks, man. Later.
All right. Okay,
sweet, man. That was cool.
That was really cool. Definitely want to thank him again for coming on.
Yeah,
that was really fun.
That was awesome.
I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I do. I don't know if there's any Seth Harwood fans out there currently right now listening, but if you are, then you know how badass that was.
And if you don't know any of his works, you should absolutely check him out.
Yeah, definitely check him out. We'll put up links on the site and to his pages on Amazon and shit. And we definitely encourage anybody who hasn't heard of him to check him out because his books are super sweet.
Yeah, they're great. I'm not just saying that because he's on the show. I mean, they're actually.
No, I wouldn't have had him on the show if I didn't think he was awesome. Yeah. I wouldn't even bothered. So, yeah, definitely. So we want to thank you guys all again for listening. And as always, stay tuned next week. Subscribe and rate us on iTunes. And we'll catch you later.
Until next time.
Peace.